Everybody, welcome to our webinar today, the Analyst Recap of NRF 2026. My name is Greg Busick, and we have a number of esteemed panelists with us today, and I'm just going to go across. Luke, I forget how to say your last name. Is it Wilderwing or Wilwarding?
This is a lifelong doozy, but Wilwarding.
Wilwarding. Okay, great. Thanks for being with us. Ricardo, welcome. Say hello there. All right, Jerry Sheldon and Lee Holman. Want to thank our sponsors today, Elo being our primary sponsor at the platinum level, and then Microsoft and Brother as well. Thank you guys for participating in this. This allowed us to put a lot more into this exercise than we would normally be able to do. And so we're grateful for you guys for being a part of that. Many of you have found the chat. It is over on the right side. Tell us where you're from. Who's your favorite teams? Are you happy that the Patriots and the Seahawks are in the Super Bowl? Were you happy that Indiana beat the U in the college championship game? What's your favorite AI tool if you're not a big sports fan? That's where you ask questions. This stuff is in the chat as we go, and we'll do Q&A at the end. Couple of housekeeping notes. If you're not already connected on LinkedIn with us, with our newsletter, highly recommend these two newsletters, Retail's Reality Check there, which is my commentary on the news each week, the retail news and kind of how it aligns, and our research fixes that. That is also a podcast if you're interested. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. You can find it. And then just this weekend, we created a new one called AI for Nonprofits. I did it as a lark. And literally, by the time I hit return at 4 a.m. in the morning in the ice storm, we already had 8 subscribers that signed up for it, and literally close to 1,000 subscribers in a day and a half. So you're welcome to do that, where I will go through AI tools I'm using, best practices, etc. For that one, but focus more towards nonprofits. For joining today, just wanted to throw this out to you guys. If you didn't find us with a pink hat running around at NRF there, we have this Just Ask Greg AI. So what is that in a nutshell? It's your on-demand analyst. It's IHL's research. Thanks, Lee. Appreciate that. If you can't see the real screen.
I didn't have to have me.
Oh, this is going to be a fun day. We only have 80. We've got 90 slides in like 85 minutes or something like that. But this is the code. Get a free month. You can get account planning there. You can get strategy planning. You can pull IHL research forecasts on your technology, all of that stuff. JustAskGreg.ai. We named it. It was supposed to be Just Ask IHL, and finally we just bit the bullet and put my name on it. So that is where you get that one. Also, we are announcing that we're going to be doing quarterly webinars called the Retail AI Pulse. There's so much going on with AI specifically in retail and AI in general that we thought it would be good to put together these webinars, and there's sponsorship opportunities for that. If you're interested in something like that, being a part of it, let us know. When you get the slides, the prospectus will be there. But also you can reach out to myself or to Jerry and get more information on that. And with that, let's get started. Well, NRF started with Super Saturday, and gosh, what a blast that day was. We were blessed with almost 300 people, and Andy Lodato started us off. Well, Ricardo started us off, but Andy started us off with incredible presentation. What is it? IT is from Mars and Ops is from Venus. Just did a fantastic job of leading us off. We talked about the opportunities with Lifesong Farm and what's happening down in Zambia. That's how things started. But we've got this opportunity to do some things really in South Africa with kids coming here. If you're based in Atlanta or Seattle and you'd like to host a bunch of kids from South Africa for a day at your company to learn about your company, reach out to us and we'll get you plugged in there. We had an AI native company panel that was really fascinating there that day, where we had actually an entire brand of clothing that the entire company was run by AI. And then once we got to the show, Manhattan's Associates and Shopify did Shop for a Cause again to raise money at their booth, which was wonderful. Because of that, 35 kids are getting to go to English-speaking schools, which allows them to get into high school. So thanks for that, Super Saturday and all things there. Okay, guys, time to play Buzzword Bingo. What? Luke, jump in here, man. These were some that we found that were just, our eyes rolling type of thing there. Unified planning. Everybody had unified planning, cost optimization strategies there, all those fun things. The control tower approach for enterprise-wide workforce management. That was a beauty there, a total mouthful. Lee, you personally threw this one in here. Canned demos with no flexibility for real life situations in the booth. You couldn't divert from the demo to do real life transactions there. The word data-driven insights. I think that was in every single booth. I believe personally that this is mine. Agentic commerce is the new customer centricity. Everybody has a different definition and nobody really knows what it is there. And then finally, hyper-personalization. What about you guys? Throw in the chat any terms that you heard that your eyes started to roll if you were doing that, and we'll take a look at that as we go forward. Best quote of the week though is insights. Kieran said insights, way overused. Best quote was from Andy Lodato. Stop calling your colleagues users. The only other people that call them users is drug dealers. And we thought that was classic. That was absolutely classic. And
best quote.
What a terrific presentation that he gave there. And we're going to build off of that and have some fun. This was a slide in Andy's presentation. Vicky said, we're an AI consulting company. Does that mean they consult with bots? You know what Andy said? What
consultants are from Uranus?
Yeah, he said IT is from Mars, operations is from Venus. Had vendors are from Saturn.
Mars.
Vendors are from Saturn.
Yeah. Vendors from
consultants
Saturn.
are from Uranus. So a little buzzword bingo here. Andy threw up this chart, and sadly, I know at least half of these. I've been around long enough where I know at least half of these acronyms here. My goodness. Some of these are new. Some of them are old. You go to BIOS, man, we're back in the 80s. We started using that one. Platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, all that fun stuff.
There. Yeah, we forgot to warn our audience that this will be a PG presentation.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about just AI overall. Massive investment in AI. It's now 15% of all IT budgets for retailers. We're seeing 27% growth year over year in AI spend. I expect that to continue. We've seen enhancements in the last 8 weeks. We've seen enhancements in the last week that are mind-blowing, that are happening in general purpose AI that is starting to hit into the retail sectors with memory and persistent memory on tools that are pretty crazy. And 61% of retailers in our research are planning rollouts with AI ML or generative AI in the next 2 years there. That number is probably low today as we look at it. So a big drive towards agentic commerce, and we're going to talk about that. The key shift that we saw at the show is literally we went from assisted intelligence, or what people were calling agents last year, which were just basically glorified chatbots. There, at best, there was a point guard on top, or of a mixture of experts on top to decide which model or which place to go with things, to fully agentic intelligence for things here. And we're starting to see that roll out specifically, and we'll go over some of those. So with that, I'm going to literally go in and turn this over to Ricardo, or Jerry. Go ahead. You go first.
Yeah, I go first, and then we crank over to Ricardo here. So for those of you guys that have done slides in your life, which is every one of you guys, I have violated every known rule on how to create a good slide. So I want to preemptively apologize for how busy this slide is, but there was so much information to try to get on a single slide that hopefully when you get the deck and somebody asks about, will we get the deck? Will we get the recording? Yes and yes. So that's coming. But this slide is the genesis initially from David Dorff of AWS. So we were trading some emails and talking about this concept of agentic. And his comment was that literally everyone they talk to has a different definition of agentic commerce. So the way that they've laid it out are these levels from level 0 up to level 5. And this is his chart on the Agentic Commerce scoreboard. So if your company's not on there and you feel like it should have been, send hate mail to David Dorff, not to Jerry Sheldon. It's what, what we're gonna direct that to. But I really love this chart.
So he says, David responded, in fairness.
He's
already passing it off.
Slide for
I'm
that,
about pass the buck here. I absolutely love that. But I really like this because I think for anybody that spent more than 30 minutes on the floor at NRF, you've had your eye roll when somebody that had no clue what agentic commerce has told you what a leader in agentic commerce they really, really are. So I like this concept of yes, let's look at it in graduations, in different levels, where we move from assistive, human list-based suggestions, up to like L2 guided, up to transactional. And that's kind of really where the state of the art is now. And Ricardo is going to unwrap this a little bit more as he compares and contrasts ACP and UCP. And I know those were some of the big buzzwords, the big announcement kind of coming from Google at the show, and we will unwrap that further. But really the exciting thing here, I think, is as we look into where we're going to go in 26 and 27, up to kind of the L3 level, we've made a strong foundation in some fundamental tools, and we're really going to be rapidly moving, I think, into kind of the L4 and the L5 level, where you actually have a shopper agent and they make buying decisions for you. And for me, as we've talked to vendors there, I think that is really going to be one of the most impactful things that is going to happen to any piece of software that has a rollover that's customer facing, that helps to a shopper determine what to purchase from a marketing standpoint. Anything that touches the customer is about to be disintermediated with this new agentic commerce. Another thing that we're going to kind of, I think, plant our flag here is what do we call this? I'd heard a couple of other terms kind of bantered around at the show, and kind of along the lines of B2B and B2C. We're going to start calling this A to A commerce. And in the chat, you can tell me maybe what your favorite word is. But we're going to go with A to A commerce as what we're going to refer to this as kind of going forward. So just really super exciting, the transformation that is occurring in the marketplace. And with that, we'll pass to the next slide.
We've got 70 more slides, guys. We need to go.
Yeah, I hope everybody freed up their calendars today.
Come on, we got the protocol wars that showed up.
Yeah, so yes, and everyone's best Yoda impression begun. The protocol wars have. You may have seen this all over LinkedIn because it's real now. In fact, we're even adding to the buzzword bingo because now you've got MCP, ACP, A2A, ATP, UCP, ACP. I could go on because there are that many new protocols and things involved. And as we said, literally here building the rails right for this autonomy. So main things at NRF that we'll go into in a little bit more detail here from the top down here. You know, the real battle now is when most people, and I'll say most because I think Greg mentioned before, where everybody has a different definition for this. So at the risk of going into definition wars, you know, if we're going to talk about agentic commerce, most people right now are thinking of what OpenAI started as instant checkout in ChatGPT, where within the chat, you can complete a transaction. Some people may want to debate that, well, that still means a human is doing the transaction versus an agent doing it on their own. We'll set that aside for a different conversation. So how do you orchestrate that, right? So there are now two competing protocols at that top layer, which you want to think of as the HTTP of agentic commerce. You've got ACP on one side, the Agentic Commerce Protocol. This was OpenAI and Stripe introduced this. They call it an open standard designed to facilitate interactions between buyers, their AI agents, and businesses. They've published it on GitHub. And then at NRF, Google announced their Universal Commerce Protocol, UCP, which they did in partnership with Shopify and a number of other retailers. We'll go into that in a minute. Also define it as an open standard where they view it as it's designed to power commerce inside AI interfaces and surfaces across retailers. And one of the distinctions I'll highlight here, if you really want to see a deep dive, a really good comparison, go on LinkedIn. There's a link here at the bottom. I know it's a long link, but Roger Dunn, he's the global media lead at Diageo. He writes a lot about this and about retail media on LinkedIn. He did a side-by-side comparison of UCP versus ACP from a brand or retailer's perspective of what do you need to know to help you decide which to implement. And to kind of skip ahead to the end, the bottom line might just be that you implement both. So what are some of the differences? Let's look at what Google announced here in Universal Commerce Protocol. They're really looking at this from the experience perspective as to what surfaces to the consumer. One of the key advantages I find in this that is the big distinction, I think, for retailers is that if you're already have your product feeds tied into Google Merchant Center because you're already feeding your product info into Google for search, then you're already enabled for UCP. So I think that's a big win I see that Google's introduced here that makes it easy to implement in theory, because the biggest question everyone has, of course, is how do I set up my product pages and define my product feed so that it will be surfaced by the LLM? So in this case, how is Gemini going to find my products? So that's your starting point. If you're already in Google Merchant Center, you're halfway there. Both protocols set up the retailer as the merchant of record. So that's a positive for both. Google really highlights here things like the ability to link to the user's identity. So they have user authentication built in. They pass all the information through so that the retailer owns most of the order management through APIs. You will own shipping, the logistics, any return management, all of those things. You see at the bottom here, who are some of the initial partners that announced with Google besides Shopify? You have Etsy, Wayfair, Target, Walmart. John Furner was on stage with Sundar announcing their partnership. If you think about what I mentioned before, Walmart is adopting both. So Walmart was one of the first retailers in ChatGPT to work through ACP. They've also adopted UCP. So they're making themselves available. They're taking the approach of we'll be available to everybody. So no matter where your interaction point is, as they put it, they want to be where consumer intent begins. I look at this as we used to talk about retailers wanting to be where your customer is. Now it's really more about being where intent begins for that customer. And that is now in the LLM. So how does that compare? So OpenAI and Stripe previously had launched the Agentic Commerce protocol. The real difference, much like Jerry's slide, I broke a lot of the rules here in slides and put an intense amount of text here. I won't read through all of that because, as Greg said, we've got another 97,000 slides to go. But the main thing is that if you're a retailer and you already work with Stripe, it could be as little as one line of code that lets you enable Agentic Commerce protocol for you to be visible and seen within ChatGPT. That's the real win here, is the ease at which you can launch that. Maybe a little bit more involved if you're not a Stripe user, but the key of this one is simplicity. So what OpenAI will tell you is that it's super simple to implement.
With Claude Bot.
That might be a different story. So the ACP is built for speed. They've not announced anything like Google did as far as tying into loyalty programs. In fact, I think OpenAI's statement is that you as the retailer, you still own all those interactions, right? That all still happens on your back end, on your site. That doesn't necessarily pass through. We'll have to wait and see, what other capabilities do they add and iteratively into ACP. But those are the main points here. So the authentication, loyalty, that's different in UCP. The simplicity to implement in ACP, if you use Google Merchant Center, your product feed is already there, then you're automatically there for Gemini to find you through UCP. Those are the differences. So as a retailer, if you're asking, which do I do? You have a choice. You can be like Walmart. Walmart said, we're going to do both because we just want to be wherever that customer intent starts. We want to be present. That's a strategy, obviously. You also may want to look, okay, what about outside of Gemini and ChatGPT? What are other LLMs going to do? So I think if you go, Greg, I think it's the next slide. Oh, actually, before I go into that, you may be wondering, since I haven't said Amazon yet, what is Amazon doing? Well, Amazon's taken a different approach, right? They have decided they're going to do this themselves and they're not going to talk to anybody else. So all these other things, protocols we're talking about, all the bots that use them, Amazon blocks them, and they want you to work through their own AI through Rufus. Now, why might they do that? Well, here are some numbers that they talked about in NRF that tells you they say 250 million customers are using Rufus, that they've already generated since they introduced this $10 billion in sales revenue to date. That's more than a lot of retailers do in a year. So from this perspective, Amazon is saying, we have enough of a user base, we have enough customers, we can do this on our own. Now, there's been a lot of things published about what Andy Jassy said. I think at Davos, people asked him in an interview, are you planning to cooperate with other LLMs? And he kind of gave a backhanded comment about how, well, the other LLMs really don't have a great experience yet. And when they catch up and build a good experience, we'll reconsider, is essentially what he said, which is sort of a backhanded way of complimenting themselves about how successful Rufus is. And I guess these numbers speak for themselves. And Jerry, you want to talk about what Salesforce is doing?
Talk about Salesforce. Yeah, I mean, it's for those of us that have past few years, you couldn't help but every vendor booth you visit, they're talking about agents. We'd like to just compliment, there are a handful of vendors out there that a couple of years ago were talking agents and actually had agents. And Salesforce clearly kind of one of those. Agents has been such an important part of Salesforce's strategy. I think at one point, Mark Benioff had even considered renaming the company Agent Force, but I think that's no longer on the table. But I think the key thing I wanted to highlight here, that they reported that AI and agents accounted for about 20% of retail sales during the 25 holiday season. So, if you're wondering, hey, are agents real or agents impactful? I think you go look at the last slide, looking at Amazon and their success with Rufus. You look at this spot point here for Salesforce, and you look at what their success was at Christmas with it and go, yeah, agents are really real. We've only begun to scrape just the tip of the iceberg, but also some of those first movers are really starting to materialize significant results that are affecting the bottom line. So I think it's kind of a shot across the bow.
And then you have Microsoft, who has announced Copilot checkout, very similar to what ChatGPT does with their instant checkout. This is built with ACP. So ACP, OpenAI's protocol, Stripe is an enabling partner here. On the payment side, PayPal has also announced support for both. So one of the interesting takeaways I saw at NRF is, I can't remember, I think the last NRF where the payment processors and payment providers were talked about as much as they were in this year. Suddenly, PayPal, Stripe, Adyen, all of these payment providers are front and center. And because of these agentic experiences and who supports what protocol, that gives them more relevance. And I think we've seen before in the past.
Yeah, that's why we're going to do a payments ecosystem report here later this year.
Yeah. So Microsoft's Copilot enable, like I said, very similar experience. You can see in the image here to OpenAI's instant checkout. You can build a cart through this and check out directly from within Copilot. The initial retailers that are supporting this, Urban Outfitters and their Anthropology brand, Ashley Furniture and Etsy sellers. Other things that Microsoft announced that are sort of adjacent to this, they announced a number of brand agents on the Shopify platform as part of their growing partnership with Shopify. It enables Shopify users to just turn on some personalization capabilities through a shopper agent directly on their Shopify storefront. And they have a few other capabilities, I think, analogous to that they've added in here. Specifically for Shopify users. I don't know if they've been turned on yet, but they've at least been announced, and they're coming for anyone who runs their storefront on Shopify. A quick.
Sorry, you wanted to shout out Adobe.
I was going to just quick shout out to Adobe that had released some e-commerce traffic stats. Now a surge of 693% over the holiday season versus 2024 for AI-driven e-commerce. I mean, if you see numbers for this holiday shopping season of what did AI drive, the percentages are all right. They out of the ballpark. And obviously, because I think that on the one hand, right, in 2024, not a lot of consumers were doing this or trusting the results. A year later, there's a lot of consumer trust built into these AI tools now, where if the AI directs them and says, hey, this is what we recommend, this is what meets your needs based on what you said, consumers are trusting that, and that's taking them to websites to make purchases. And that's what the Adobe data is showing.
Next slide here.
Yeah, so SAP also, some announcements with their Commerce Cloud. They're integrating with shopping bots. SAP has really gone full in with building tools over the MCP protocol as a baseline. If you remember the previous slide when we had the various layers, MCP doesn't really compete with UCP or ACP. You could, in fact, connect MCP to either of those protocols in a commerce platform. But what SAP is doing is really building additional capabilities via what they're calling a storefront MCP server that can plug into any of these agentic tools that we've talked about, whether it's ACP or UCP, and to enable things if you're on their commerce cloud. So things like a direct data connection, you can do ordering agents and so on. So you can start to see that any commerce cloud product that you're on is adding this functionality through these protocols. Now, if you want another option, you can look at what Target has done. Target's OpenAI integration, they've actually built an app inside of ChatGPT. So if you're asked ChatGPT, hey, is this product available at Target? Then ChatGPT may suggest to you, why don't you add the Target app into this conversation by just typing in at Target? And then once you do, you can see here in the image, you now will see an experience that Target provides, surfacing their inventory. You can actually do orders this way. You can complete the transaction, choose whether you want Target to ship it to you, whether you want to pick it up at a local store. It's enabled not directly through either ACP or UCP, but through an app interface that they've built with OpenAI's APIs within ChatGPT. So you have yet another option of how to do this. We mentioned before a little bit that Walmart is an initial partner with Google for their the Gemini integration here for ACP. John Furner was on stage, mentioned, why are they doing this? Well, it's because they want to be, like I mentioned before, where that customer intent begins. That's where they want to capture the customer. Walmart's not worried about where's the experience coming from. They're just worried about who's delivering the order. And they want to be the retailer that delivers that order and really leverage their supply chain.
Okay, so we're switching from AI side and agentic stuff. We're now at the bottom of the end of the way through, so we got to pick it up. Speaking with mine, and that's the importance of the store. We've had a lot of talk about how AI can disintermediate the whole sales process, but the store is still the fulfillment engine here. Dick's Sporting Goods now fulfills 80% of all its online orders at the store shelves, and our research shows that 89% of revenues still show a store component in some manner regarding fulfillment. One of the cool things that I saw with Intel there at the show was this 6-meter by 6-meter box by Unistop that has a robot inside, which it's all big giant touchscreens on the outside. So you can drop these into a university, a hospital, a bus stop, a train stop. They have over 200 SKUs and items in there at any one time, hot and cold. And there's a single robot that manages the entire store. That was a pretty cool product that they showed there. It's, I believe it was Singapore where it's being used right now, but really, really cool solution there. Ricardo, back to you, Dick's House of Sport.
Yeah, so one of the more interesting things, if you attended the opening sessions at NRF, usually you expect to hear a lot about technology, much like the Google session where they announced UCP. But the opening session was an interview of Ed Stack, Dick's Sporting, chairman of Dick's Sporting, to talk about what makes Dick's so special in the eyes of the consumer. And he really talked about that experiential retail concept with the House of Sport. And their premise for this was to say, they asked themselves, we need to build the concept that will kill Dick's Sporting Goods. We need to build the concept that if somebody else built it, it would kill us. And that's how their perspective was formed on what to build with House of Sport. And if you've not been to one, you see there's rock climbing walls, there are batting cages, there are outdoor fields surrounding the experience so that anything related to sport you can experience at this Dick's House of Sport. And they intend to do more of these. Now, of course, they need a lot of space to do it, and they're not going to be everywhere. But the point is, this is how they enable people to really build community around their brand. It really brings back, pre-pandemic, I think everyone talked about experiential retail as the big thing before we all dove into AI as the big technology thing. But this really brings it back to what matters is that human experience that a retail brand can deliver. AI and the other technology, I'd put it into perspective. It's just something that it helps enable an experience. It's not the experience. That's not why people will come to you as a brand and shop with you.
All right. Convenience stores. We're starting to see the combined concepts that are starting to happen in convenience stores, from fresh food, meal replacement, et cetera, et cetera. Normally I have my Buc-ee's cup here. I think I took it home to get cleaned, and somebody took it there. But, brisket on the board, or whether it's good soups and sandwiches at Wawa's and Sheetz, more and more concepts now, including this, prepared food as part of the situation. I will tell you, this was very popular in the ice storm this weekend, to be able to just get out and go anywhere to get something that you're not cooking yourself. Retail operations and workforce. I'm going to go very quickly through this. Some concepts are seeing, particularly C-stores, see up to 400% turnover every year or their associates. So you've got to be able to bring them on board really quickly. Met for an hour with Workday at the event there, and really got to see their vision regarding what was happening in terms of their view of the workforce, how they can enable the workforce. And obviously their focus with AI is to enable the workforce to provide better service to the customers there. Time to hire dropping to 3.5 days at 7-Eleven and Ace Hardware to get somebody completely on board with everything regarding that. Now, once again, when you're in an industry where you're 400% turnover, any day that you save there is huge. A tool that I'm really impressed with what Scandit is doing personally. The tool that they have with their image engine is in 1.5 million Walmart devices to be used by associates. And what's cool about this is where RFID can tell you, hey, it's here. The image device can tell you which box it is when all the boxes look the same. And that is really, really powerful there for things there. So well done from Scandit. I think they're doing some really cool stuff. And they had several features showing some different installations. I think Carrefour, if I'm not mistaken, Carrefour was one of them and Walmart was the other. And they kind of put them together. It was Carrefour Poland, I think, if my memory is good there. Really good. Jerry, I'll throw it over to you for our friends at NCR.
Yeah, so one of the things that NCR Voyix, I still want to say NCR, excuse me, but NCR Voyix was really focused on was framing the shopping journey, really framing the platform from the perspective of the persona and what are the different personas that a person may require. I'm not sure which persona I fit into, but there's different personas there, and you just basically creating a technology platform that supports the persona. And I think one of the things that's, to me, that I find interesting is that when you look at where NCR functions, where you can have a gas station that also has a fast food, or you can have fast food within a grocery store, again, all those key areas that NCR Voyix operates in. What their platform showed is that you could take, like, let's say like a hospitality function, and you could drop that in as a code enhancement in the core tech stack so that you have the functionality that you need for the hospitality, and then you have the functionality that you need, say, for convenience gas or with grocery store, et cetera. So kind of what they're showing is a much quicker time to value, a lot greater flexibility for the end user, and starting to see some huge successes from this, I guess, this enhancement, this refinement in their platform performance perspective.
One other thing that I thought was really impressive is how not only could you mix concepts of things, which we're seeing all this merging together, but also all the little country nuances, currencies, whether or not you take stable coins, those sort of things, those little nuances can be added very, very easily in their platform. Dollar Tree, this was interesting. This was Giancarlo at Super Saturday talking about a cautionary tale when deploying AI. They had the perfect scenario built. They had the scenario, what happens if somebody drives through the front of a store with their car? And you know what? The AI bot had the perfect answer of what you should do, but they never stopped to think at the time of saying the last thing that somebody's going to do if a car comes through the front door is say, what do I do to the chatbot? Type of thing, which was a great response. How you can get so obsessed with the technology, you kind of go, well, wait, we never use it that way. So that was a great example where AI for AI's sake really is not the approach you should take. And they did go on to talk about how they've got a custom LLM that guides their store managers to focus on which stores they need to look at for that day and why, to help guide their workflow to best help the organization.
I love that. The technology can, but should the technology?
Yeah, exactly. All right, Lee, you're
doesn't
up.
mean it'll get used.
You've been nice
All
and
right.
quiet.
Sales Chef AI, this was one of the nuggets that I found in this year's NRF. They had a booth down on the lower floor, and I actually stopped there as I was off to another appointment. I stopped because some of what they were showing in the booth was really compelling, and it spoke to what we as a group of analysts have been telling retailers since 1997. You got to get your data squared away and cleaned up. It's got to happen. And that's just part of what they're doing. What they're doing is they're taking the specifications for the products that a retailer has. I mean, we're talking about the very back of the back room stuff that never makes it to the light of day. And they're taking a look at that and bringing forward through the value chain to the consumer the things that they believe will be compelling to the consumer, that the consumer never knows about because it's just in the specs. So this was attractive to me. It got me thinking about some other things, and they're focused on retail and hospitality, but you could use this for just about any industry. I'm thinking, analyst firms. We've got all kinds of experience and background and stuff that people never see sometimes. So this was a nice nugget for me. Thanks, Greg.
All right. Going to inventory and supply chain and robotics. Jerry, go.
Yeah, Blue Yonder. I mean, they've really had, if you back up several years, Blue Yonder's made a massive investment in building their tech stack to have AI integrated all the way through that. And then once you obviously have your AI, then you can certainly build agents on top of that. So they were talking about a fairly broad suite of agents that they're coming to market. And their kind of take on it is that they're really trying to take a focus where these agents move beyond just transactional to reasoning, deciding, and acting autonomously. And I think that's the key point here, is this autonomous action. Think of sort of like self-healing in a way, and that's where we're going to be looking and talking about supply chains in this section, and even further when we talk about store systems, where we begin to have these agents that diagnose, understand, they address the problem, but then they also address some of the cascading effects that occur as a byproduct of those changes, understanding that it is a cascading effect and further actions need to be addressed as a part of this cascading effect. As kind of in continuing in that vein with Infios and some of their announcements, the key thing I would like to highlight here is just that third bullet point under innovation. Their key point here is find problem, fix problem, no human. End of story. Very, very, again, the self-healing aspect applied to order management, where an order gets stuck. Why did this order get stuck? Well, historically, we relied upon humans to go find why that order got stuck, to diagnose, prescribe, and rectify that. Well, now we're talking about self-healing within the order management space, where the software is able to go in, understand what the problem is, consider a broad range of solutions, and then action on those broad range of potential solutions optimized to fit a retailer strategy. So again, what you see there is this OMS shifts from a rules engine to an agentic decision layer engine, where we might have to program in thousands of potential scenarios. Well, the system, opening up its toolbox, can diagnose and augment a great solution without human intervention.
Great. Did I go too far? Yeah, I went too
far. Did you skip the Fluent slide?
No, there it is.
Okay,
Jesta and then Fluent.
Yeah, so the key point with Jesta, they introduced or continued to talk about their Farsight IQ. This is really a partnership with Evado Labs. And the key thing is that these are really models that are optimized around not just merchandising in general, but really merchandising specific to fashion. So again, I think the point here is that retailers are taking, instead of this broad, maybe, again, I'm not going to call it a small language model. I don't know if technically it fits that definition of a small language model. But again, saying, okay, what are the technical nuance pieces that we need in our optimized model, and looking for that specificity, and then being able to bring that intelligent specificity back into the platform to give very user-specific, deep-level expertise that has greater expertise than just a more generalized model. And then Fluent order management, the thing that they're talking about is A/B testing. So what they have demonstrated and what they were talking about at NRF is, so we'll say you may set up a set of order management rules saying, hey, this is how I want the product to flow. But then you may want to tweak those rules, and you're not really sure what effect it's going to have relative to your overall strategy, your key performance objectives as a company that you're trying to adhere to. So what they have done is they've created the ability to section off a portion of orders, maybe 10, maybe 20% of the orders, apply those order rules to this small subset and see what the effect is. So instead of implementing a change and maybe breaking something significantly, you take a small subset, you test it out with live inventory, with live orders, you see what the impact is to your corporate objectives, and then you can say, hey, do I want to tweak this scenario? Do I want to go live with this full scenario? Or do I want to kill this scenario because this was a super bad idea?
So this is a step past the digital twin. You may have done this with your digital twin already, but now you get to apply it in real time. Interesting.
Absolutely. I think one of the challenges that they kind of spoke about, others may have a different perspective regarding simulation, but their point is that when you simulate, you're not dealing with real-time inventory. And so much of real-time inventory affects the optimization. So yes, you potentially could simulate, but you're not dealing with real-time inventory. So their take is that it's not the most accurate of simulation. So their take is that it's better to do it with real data, carve off a small piece, see the effect, and then pivot from there.
All right. Oracle.
So Oracle talks about, and again, I'm not an expert by any means on item similarity vectorization. When I was doing a little research on it, it sounds like somewhat similar to RAG, but not exactly. But basically, they've taken this approach to item similarity vectorization, and they've applied it broadly throughout their suite. And what they're talking about, their highlight is by taking this item similarity vectorization, say that 3 times really fast.
Yeah.
marrying that with their huge Oracle cloud infrastructure and really being able to take some of those two technologies, marry them together, and the returns that they're seeing applied to retail have really been extraordinary. So that was the key thing that they were really talking about.
That's really interesting. In the age of AI, the concept of chaos spinning in a warehouse, you can't apply that to AI. You got to put everything together there to make sense. Whereas in a warehouse, you actually get better performance by spreading it all out. So there's only one of that item in the actual spot. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, Lee, gray orange.
Gray orange. This was interesting. This company is doing something that I haven't known of anybody else doing. They're looking at gluing together every robot system that's out there for this kind of work. And the fact they call it gray matter, I thought that was kind of But that's basically what they're doing. Some of their client list, and their client list is pretty impressive. They got Nike, they got H&M, they got Walmart Canada, they got Apotec. And the work that they're doing here, it actually speaks to results of the study we just done, because 40% of retailers are saying connecting disparate systems is one of their priorities for the coming year. So that's a big deal for them.
Okay, JD Sports. Nuno, you asked for RFID. Here's your first slide on RFID. We are huge fans of this, and this wasn't part of NRF, but this case study from Checkpoint Systems came out, I think, yesterday, and it's the first time I saw somebody, truly quote a sales uplift that they got from RFID, a 5% sales uplift, 98% accuracy overall with what JD was achieving there, which is, we've seen it. It's been reflected in the numbers, but really, really strong results here. And we've really hit the tipping point for RFID. We've got tags from Impinj that are now under a penny, which is huge, which is really speeding things up. Walmart is rolling it out to almost every item in the store, even items under $1. As a result of that is just hitting the numbers up. This is very similar to what we saw with source tagging, with loss prevention back in the early to late 90s. And really starting to see this as a form not just of inventory tracking, but also checkout as well in several sections, which really brings us to this concept of loss prevention, which is a lot of my history there. We are seeing huge problems and challenges really with ethics, and as the economy has gotten worse, it's got even further. 27 people openly admit to stealing from self-checkout, and 67% of those people plan to do it again. And we have exported our self-checkout crime to the UK. It increased, their shrink in the UK is now up another 50% there. So some of the solutions, I was privileged to speak at the Trigo booth and talk about their solution, which was really, really cool because of the way it does it. It is an edge processing video or computer vision exercise that follows people throughout the store, but does it in an anonymous way there to do it. So it's not just at the self-checkout. It's not just at one place. It actually follows them in the store. So you need a minimum of 2 cameras there, but typically you have 20 to 80 cameras. This is a solution that is from Israel there and has been greatly enhanced as a result of October 7 and some of the technologies that have been deployed there in that region. And now it's the opportunity to bring that to retail. There's another slide on computer vision that I forgot. I made a mistake and something got deleted. Our friends at Ultron AI were in the ELO booth, and they had a radical demonstration that literally could throw items across the scanner and it would pick it up that wasn't scanned correctly with the computer vision. Luke, you had shared you wanted to jump in on this one since it was in your booth.
Well, Greg, I just wanted to comment that Ultron AI and their unique process of ingesting hundreds of thousands of items and converting those images really to UPC symbols. And so as you look at the AI capability, you're really turning customers that miss a scan, who might be considered thieves, they're stealing, into just customers that are scanning, but they might have missed the UPC. Imager, the camera, picks it up and just simply adds it to the cart. Or if I scan 2 items, it simply adds both items to the cart rather than causing a block, asking labor to come over. So there's some really unique efficiencies that we showcased in our booth with Ultron AI and just where this is going from a checkout process.
Yeah, another one that we're going to be doing a webinar here with soon is Gatekeeper Systems. And you know Gatekeeper from the perspective of locking the carts as you go through. But they've got a technology called Face First, which is one that allows you to use facial recognition to see people when they come in the store, their behavior within the store there, and what's happening when you get to the checkout for that. What we found is those retailers that use facial recognition, as it's becoming more political correct as the level of theft increases, is their rate of growth drops 70% of theft. And it's a huge deterrent and drops things very, very fast because you can identify people as they walk in the door as to whether they were problems in other stores. You also have things like slip and falls and other aspects of loss and threats that you have, and the ability to pull facial recognition from other stores and see people who are casing stores, etc. Really powerful solution that the folks there are working on.
Face First kind of sounds like what happens when the cart locks up.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great
I'm
name.
sure that's not where the name comes from.
Yeah, and then Everseen, not to be outdone, is the 800-pound gorilla, so to speak, of this. They've been in the market for a long time. They're with massive numbers here, 15 million transactions a day, 150 million items a day, etc. What I thought was cool, and it's not quite ready necessarily, but it was shown, was Everact, which is their new tool that goes through the metadata of all those interactions and puts Google Gemini's power on top of it. And to be able to find all of those things interactively, but run all of this stuff on a slim edge device, literally was really, really powerful there. And our cohorts at Forrester confirmed that basically for every unprotected self-checkout, they lose $88,000 a year due to theft. And so just having this video overview from a security standpoint is huge. Then Sensormatic, Tony, I know Tony's watching here and a part of this, but talked about their organized retail crime initiative there, essentially smart exits. What's really cool is it really innovative. They now have, instead of just having pedestals that look like pedestals, they've got video boards now that can be embedded in these pedestals. And when you try to steal something, it actually shows the item on the screen of what you're stealing. It literally comes out, so this guy is stealing this, or this lady's stealing this. I thought that was hilarious. Always learn something when I go into the Sensormatic booth. Last year, it was about the backpacks, the RFID backpacks, where they went in under a barber shop, I think it was Brooklyn, and they found almost an entire Macy's store worth of merchandise under a barbershop in Brooklyn there. But the organized retail crime becoming a huge, still a huge thing. We've made progress, but it's still a major issue. And then Amazon talked about the portable RFID lanes. I had meant to put a picture in here. I ran out of time here. Just that rather than just focusing on computer vision only for just walk out, they're actually using RFID and leveraging RFID tags for things there. So they are using those all over the place. They were using them last week, I think. There is Lumen Field the Seahawks? Does anybody know here? Is that the Seahawks Stadium, what they call that now? Or is that the baseball stadium? I don't know, but yes, it is. Thanks, Doug. They're a little loud there, so you never know. But so they were used a lot this past weekend. The only game it didn't snow at, and then credit with 83% theft reduction at UC San Diego there. So using this at much faster processing when you're using self-checkout. And with that, we're going to take a break, turn it over for a word from our sponsor, Luke.
Greg, I appreciate that. So you mentioned earlier that stores matter, and I tell you, we couldn't agree more. And Zebra recently acquired Elo, and this closed back in the October timeframe or Q4 timeframe, and it really emphasizes this message that stores matter. And I'd like to make 3 comments. So Store Edge is no longer split between operational tech and customer tech. It's really all coming together to serve customers. And when we start to look at fixed POS and interactive customer experience endpoints, they're all strategic. It's not legacy, especially with the advances in self-service, AI, and automation. It's coming together in a brave new way here. And so this better together story of Zebra and Elo positions us as a retail platform leader, which really brings the end-to-end technology together for our customers to support labor efficiency, automation, and really innovation. So I wanted to make that comment. This was the site that you would have seen walking into the Javits at NRF, the massive billboards out front, just advertising Elo and Zebra better together. So with that, Greg, next slide here. So just a couple points on what we showcased in the booth. And again, I appreciate IHL for giving us the opportunity to present this. So we did launch a new Intel backpack, which for us, this is bringing about compute at the edge. And as we start to look at where does the AI workloads reside, how will the various innovations work within these environments, our new edge compute device will manage those workloads efficiently as we look at stores reinventing themselves. We did introduce a new configurable self-checkout. And so when we look at self-checkouts, they're heavy, they're complex, there's a lot involved there. Elo, through its initial launch of the Wallaby, which was really a very simplified kiosk, we're now bringing apart the new Wallaby self-checkout. And this is a very configurable SCO, which will enable our customers to continue to move forward with the self-checkout experiences. We also showed, as Greg, you mentioned before, the Ultron AI flexibility, but the idea that I can simply just add a peripheral to the self-checkout and add in the AI component to this. It no longer has to be a science project, overly complex. It's simply something you can buy through the channel and work through from a store perspective. We did have, and I liked a couple of the comments in terms of agentic, and everyone's making comments. We're in this generative phase, and me included, and how agentic will come about in physical stores. And I posed the question a while back, and Elo has always been a hardware manufacturer, but how does the hardware support agentic in store? You really need a unique speaker and microphone to have a one-on-one conversation with technology that isn't amplified throughout a store or listening to everything that's happening, where you hear the hey something and somebody responds and you're like, well, what was that? And this is where the AI Connect experience, which we showed with AutoZone and our 22-inch self-service screens. But this was an example of how AI, through an agentic experience, could go through and help with labor and being more strategic, where I can simply identify verbally what car I have, and then I'm looking for oil. I'm looking for an air filter. I'm looking for whatever that might be. And it could do some suggestive uplift. But when we get back to physical stores, there's complexity there. And we're solving that complexity with real world examples and how the hardware can meet those needs. We also showcased JCPenney. And this is the idea that, hey, labor is expensive. Labor is important. How do we empower labor? We're putting the point of sale device, as well as we mentioned before, the operational technology and that customer tech into the palm of our employee hands. And we're doing that with payment integration. So the idea that I can carry my full POS, my full BOPIS pick device, my scanning for inventory and counts, it's all now an all-in-one, but I can still dock that device to have a high volume lane as we look at this ability to do fixed to mobile. So again, just some great examples there of innovations that are real world and we're seeing out in the market today. And so Greg, just to wrap up here, the folks at Elo as well as Zebra, we're really excited about this better together story. And I just want to emphasize, as we look at bringing Zebra's unmatched operational capabilities from RFID printing, the leader in mobility, together with Elo's point of sale fixed device strategy and architectures, we're really creating this end-to-end flexibility for our customers. And furthermore, we're bringing an Intel portfolio to Zebra. We're bringing the world's leading commercial display platform. We're bringing large format digital signage into the fold. And as we look at the months and year to come, we will start to have the future architecture for our customers that will bring consistency across the life cycle and everyday devices for everyday use. So again, I appreciate the ability to speak here briefly. And again, thank you, Greg and team.
All right, guys, from a housekeeping standpoint, thanks, Luke. We've got about 1 minute per slide. So Lee, you're up.
Good enough. The key thing on this slide is what's in the gray box there. 21% of restaurant budgets, IT budgets are going to AI this year, and it's increasing 25% a year.
That's significantly higher than
Next
retail.
slide,
Yeah.
please. One of the fun things that I had to do. NRF has had the food service innovation zone the last 3 years, and it's always interesting because you see some technology that not necessarily applicable to retail, but definitely for restaurants, hotels, and entertainment centers, and so forth. And I got the chance to go see that this year, along with what was called the pit stop. And in the pit stop, it was a collaboration of about a dozen vendors, and basically they built a full-size drive-through on the show floor, and they had go back one slide. You can see the go-kart. The guy sat in there. I went through this. I did not use the go-kart. I own a Ford F-150. I prefer climbing up.
For a reason.
I prefer climbing up and in and down and out than the opposite. So I walked through it, and I went through with one of the assistants there. And basically, it takes you from soup to nuts, all the way from ordering all the way to fulfillment. And what I saw there, a lot of displays from Hoffman, from LG, from, I forgot the other guy's name, Microtouch. And you start out with Vox AI. Vox AI handles all the voice ordering and so forth. And I tried to trick it a couple of times. I changed my order a couple of times. I used a Sean Connery voice. It's Scotland, for God's sake. And basically, I tried to make it fail, and it did not. It took the order just perfectly and put it on through the system. And as you walk around, you see that there's the underpinnings of all this is the platform from Quo, and that's QU. It's pronounced Quo, and basically that serves as the underpinning for everything that's going on here. You've got the kitchen operations. They're got intelligent video from Unomi and Kenkus. The carousel, the conveyor system that they've got is from Franca, and that's the same one that the real big Chick-fil-A drive-thrus use. It basically took the product from the kitchen to the fulfillment window. And then you've got Esper is handling all the device management throughout the whole system. And once you're done, then if you need to, Tammy has a robot that will pick it up and take care of the last mile part of this. All in all, this was just a really fun and educational time. And I guess the key thing is that kind of the message that I saw in several settings throughout the show. You can't do this stuff on your own. You've got to have good partners with you. Next slide. Restaurants, we don't hear that much about restaurants at NRF, but with some significant spend going on there. 21% of IT budget is AI, 25%, we talked about that already. 64% of restaurants that we surveyed are saying they're going to spend money on computer vision this coming year. So that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
and
if you're keeping tabs, it was 15% for AI for general, so 21% for restaurants. Still having tremendously an acute labor shortages. Okay, I'll jump in here. I got to see Epson briefly. It was one of those where I was on one side of the show and I had a 30-minute meeting on another side of the show by the time I got there. But was good to see them and talk about label printing, particularly label printings for delivery. This is a larger format printer here, but a lot of their business seeing a lot of uptick continuing in label printing for delivery of food orders, pickup of food orders, and that's expanding more towards the kitchens. And we'll talk a little bit about some of that technology, but as grocery stores start preparing orders for customers as well as a replacement for fast food or for catering jobs, seeing growth in that area as well with Epson. Traditional POS receipts, but also that sort of thing. Payments and frictionless checkout. Let's talk a little bit about that. Acuvia was talking about soft POS, which is the running of the credit card things on the point of sale terminal as just part of the POS rather than having a separate device that's required or a separate PIN pad device there. They're working with Toshiba and HP as well as Aptos, I think, in this, leveraging a technology called Felix Pay that works around different Windows types devices for point of sale. This is an interesting thing that's growing very rapidly in retail. Once again, it's going to be part of that payments ecosystem report that we've got to do here to discuss all these different changes in payments. Jerry, you want to talk about Aptos that you saw?
Yeah, sure. So with Aptos, for those that have been following Aptos, they've been really maturing their Aptos One commerce POS platform for several years. One of their big announcements this year was really country in a box. For those of you guys that follow the payment space, we've seen more and more countries on a yearly basis embrace, institute fiscalization requirements. Basically, the government wants to make sure they're getting their piece of the pie. So they're embarking on new legislation and reporting requirements to make sure they get their tax dollars. So Aptos was talking about their country in a box, which really reduces the barrier to adoption wrapped around some of the constraints around fiscalization. Furthermore, centralized promotions management as well.
So Honeywell is doing payments as well. It was interesting to stop off there at the Honeywell booth and see what they were doing with SmartPay there, because literally the age verification and using RFID integration and just kind of bringing all of their technologies together to support payments, as well as just the normal supply chain flexibility that they have. Honeywell's such a huge company. They do everything from the supply chain, but now they're moving more and more into software in particular, and software that impacts the store at a much greater way than the supply chain. So that was good to do there but to see their smart pay in particular. Jerry, back to you for JumpMind.
Yeah. JumpMind, super cool here. I do our OMS and our POS landscape report. In both of those reports, if anybody's familiar with those, I have a chart in there that looks at integration time. So best time, worst time, shortest time, longest time, average time. And I think JumpMind just broke my chart. So what they've demonstrated with both DTLR and Shoe Palace stores, the ability within one day, no personnel on site, 200 store rollout, just really raising the bar. I mean, we used to talk about, installations taking months and months and months across large chains, and they've clearly raised the bar, and they're really what they've been able to do and demonstrate, and their key area of focus are tier one retailers. So they're really moving the needle in a really significant way there, as well as integrating and talking about their CX Connect digital signage at the register. Super neat technology. 54% of shoppers are noticing displays there. A really great take on queuing up in line and kind of the Disney model. How do we keep people entertained and engaged while they're waiting in line?
Okay, now we're going to talk about AI infrastructure, the platform race here, rather than just agentic. I mean, we are seeing massive change in adoption on ASICs. Lee, back to you.
Yep. Real quick. I mean, basically, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, the three biggies in the retail and hospitality arena for this. They don't make it anywhere near the top 10 in the world in terms of the rest of the providers. Broadcom, Intel, Texas Instruments, and so forth and so on, just to keep things in scale. For Amazon, they've announced Trainium 4 at the end of last year, and it's due out in December of this year. Google announced I guess their TPU number 8. They don't know when this year it's going to come out. Chances are it's going to be the last quarter this year. And Microsoft just announced yesterday the Maya 200. So that's what I have to say there. Basically, these guys, they've got three different approaches for how you want to do things, and it's entirely up to the retailer. Next slide.
Really trying to reduce inference cost is the big play here.
Yeah, and although we didn't visit the booth, the NVIDIA at Consumer Electronics show, NVIDIA buying Grok, GROQ, there and adding their inference engine into their platform takes it to a whole other level as well. Yeah. So Lee, back to you.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Back to you.
Platforms, same idea here. Three different approaches. Amazon is looking to be all things to all people, just about. Microsoft is looking to embrace the people that already use their products and OpenAI. And Google is really going down the proprietary lane. So what you've got currently installed is pretty much going to dictate which way you want to go.
Yeah, and I think personalized intelligence from Google just came out, and apparently the new Siri is supposed to come out in February, is what I heard, which will be based on good personalization, or Apple's version of that. Okay, Lee.
Yeah, this was kind of cool. This is the first NRF in many years that I actually had a chance to sit down and listen to some of the big ideas sessions. And this was one of the things that I mentioned before. You need help in doing this stuff, and this whole session kind of emphasized that and accentuated it. Basically, the folks that were on the panel. You've got a consultant, you've got the vendor, you got a couple of vendors, well, three vendors actually. And this was entertaining. It was insightful. I guess bottom line in all this, you've got the 4 bullet points there. The digital twins, I've made this comment before, digital twins, we were doing that 30, 40 years ago in the marine engineering field. We called it modeling.
Modeling or bottling?
Modeling.
Modeling. Okay.
Modeling. So good session, good crowd for that one. Back to you, Greg.
All right. So got to go to a breakfast. I think Ricardo, I think were you there too?
Yeah.
The Limbic, unfortunately, the primary speaker, the founder, was not able to attend. Really interesting concept of causation AI for marketing. They spent a lot of time talking about building a supercomputer capability with NVIDIA there. Really looking at being able to predict the marketing spend. How do you know which application is going to work? What's the joke? You pick, that 50% of your stuff is going to work and 50% is just going to fail, but you don't know which one is what. That's the concept behind this. How do you get to much more accurate results where you can model it up front and know that this is causation? Because the owner wasn't there, or the founder wasn't there, I missed the underlying technology that I would really have loved as an analyst, because it's like, if I correlate on 9 variables, does that become causation? If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, sings like a duck, waddles like a duck, and sits like a duck, and swims like a duck, and we say it's actually a duck type of thing. I don't know where that leap is made. And I wish that we had flight problems. I would have loved to have learned more on that, but really promising if they're able to really pull that off.
I used to have a boss that said with 9 variables, you could curve fit an elephant.
Yeah, but that's what, RFID, for instance, RFID and computer vision, you hear us talk about it a lot, but the numbers stack on top of each other time after time after time after survey after survey after survey, that the best performing retailers are using these technologies. They're investing in these technologies at levels way beyond everybody else there. And so that leads us into more RFID discussion. And what we saw at the Zebra Technologies booth with Crave Retail, they continue to roll out their RFID power fitting room technology, which is really, really cool. They're now in 2,500 fitting rooms of Victoria's Secrets, and they've now gone to H&M, Gap, and Athletics. They're, 80% of shoppers leave when they can't find their size rather than seeking assistance. The ability for this to say, this is too small, I need a larger one, and using RFID to find the products there is huge there. So this was really cool. Luke, this is part of your ecosystem as well. I know you wanted to jump in here.
Greg, it's just so on trend. This is supporting labor. It's supporting automation. It's supporting overall customer experience and journey. So as you start to look at these types of systems, I think Crave will continue to expand in terms of their capability and what they can do for customers in store. So again, I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of these types of systems, and Crave is truly leading in this space.
It's the technology so magical that they've actually run into some PR problems because people think it's being done by cameras instead of being done by RFID. So they need to work on that a little bit there, but it's really fascinating technology to see what they've done. And I agree with you. I think it's going to continue to expand because that size differential between retailers, you're a size 2 here, you're a size 8 somewhere else, that problem is going to continue to exist and is really hitting into returns. So we're going to talk about the evolving store here now. Jerry, jump in. Oh, this one's me here. So Instacart had several technologies there. Really fascinating that they have really taken a leap forward in their presence at NRF and their involvement with NRF. And I meant to look this up and I didn't today. They talked about deployments of at Wegmans. There, 20% of Wegmans stores now have it. They're seeing on average a 2 to 3% base uplift because people have a running total of what's in their basket type of thing. They now have 20 different brand partners, and they claim 0 cart stolen for Wegmans in 20% of those stores. The part I meant to look up, and somebody could look it up online as we're doing this, but Kroger made a commitment there, and it wasn't a minor commitment. It was a pretty significant commitment to Instacart carts, the Caper carts within there. The other thing that was cool there is, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, how they are using a technology, and oh gosh, forgive me, I forget the name of it. It's a catering technology for retailers. Now, I mean, we always go to Publix for birthday cakes and you make it a platter or something like that. But the full-on catering solutions that you would typically go to a large-scale restaurant to get catered for a wedding or a party or something else like that, they've got a solution that enables that could be your local Walmart, Publix, et cetera, that does the cooking and providing that food. And you're talking things like brisket and other things, roasts and stuff that's other than just your typical subs and sandwiches that you would get from retailers there. So I thought that was a really cool technology. I appreciate Jake showing me around there for that. Then we have our Simbi Robotics. They're announced their Tally 4.0 there type thing. Continue to see greater penetration of AI robotics there. It's also important. We did a white paper. It's on our website with Brainco, talking about their solution as well. You can pull that up for free on that. But just the speed at which robotics is being accepted and adopted at the store level by employees. Yeah, thanks, Lee. I thought it was 1,000, but I didn't remember off the top of it. I wasn't sure if it was 100 or 1,000 stores, but that's pretty impressive. 1,000 stores planned for that. But robotics at the store level, combining RFID and computer vision to be used to get to better inventory and whether it's cleaning bots or whatever as well, this is growing big time and being accepted at a much higher level. Turn it back to you, Jerry. Talk about IBM.
Yeah, cool. So again, the point we're trying to make here is thinking of the store as an ecosystem of sensors. The thing I really like about IBM, and again, I'm sure they've had thousands of patents on it, but they've really democratized, IBM has really democratized AI. And the thing that you're going to see here that I would like to highlight is this. So not only are we moving from agents, but the thing that IBM was talking about is these multiple specialized agents working together. So not just an agent working on a singular problem, but the agents working together in a cohesive ecosystem to create comprehensive store intelligence. So they talked about they have a store manager agent working with an insights agent, working with an actions agent, again, working in concert with an inventory agent. I think that's kind of the next maturation of agents that you're seeing is not going to be just singular agents, but these agents working together in this ecosystem to empower employees and to gather information in the store, making it a really cohesive ecosystem of sensors and inputs to create actionable intelligence on. Kind of continuing that theme, a new word here, new terminology, Aptos talking about super agents. So not only do we just have agents, but now if you can work with Aptos, they have super agents and kind of have what their terminology, what they're really talking about with these super agents. Again, piggybacking off of what we saw with IBM is these suite of agents kind of working together. And the thing that I really like about this is that these agents are really POS specific. So you have a concierge agent, you have a store associate agent, and a store manager agent working together around really the POS function. And we have different companies talking about agents, but this is really a key example of POS specific, mobile POS specific agents working together to enhance the store experience and the capability for store associates. GK, I was very fortunate to be able to speak. They actually had a breakfast on Tuesday morning that I got to speak at. About 120 people maxed out the place. And this was really kind of the coming out party. We talked about a few acquisitions on our call here, but this was really sort of the coming out party between GK and Fujitsu. And probably you'll be maybe familiar with GK on the call, but I think the thing that I'd like to really highlight with GK is that not only do they have really market-leading POS technology, but really they've invested heavily in the AI space, and they have a much broader suite of technologies that they bring to market. So you marry that great in-store expertise with the history and the legacy of a company like Fujitsu. It's been in business well over 100 years, huge AI investments, huge R&D investments, bringing those together. Just a really exciting time for the GK team. Next, Toshiba. One of the key things highlighted by Toshiba at their booth was a power over Ethernet camera. And the really cool thing about this camera is that this is an edge computing camera. So think about any and everything from loss prevention to using a camera to identify items as part of self-checkout, using a camera to trigger other systems, using a camera to check and monitor maybe a cashier for sweethearting, using a camera to watch a consumer to make sure that they're not stealing. They have a single camera that you can apply to all of these use cases. And again, power over Ethernet, and all the compute is wrapped up at the edge, actually not at the edge, actually in the camera itself. Under $1,000, super impressive. HP. In our visit with HP, the key thing that they were talking about was their workforce experience platform. And the thing and we've had systems out there that look at hardware health monitoring, but to me, this expanded it beyond a level that I was familiar with. And it's their ability not just to check the health and monitor HP devices, but the full range of retail devices, scanners, scales, monitors, etc., is what their workforce experience platform has been expanded to.
Yeah, I wanted to apologize to our friends at HP and Toshiba. You were two of the three last meetings. Brad Tracy's probably on here, a third one. I was walking up the steps to the Toshiba meeting, and the fourth step, I hear a crunch in my knee. And so, yeah, I got wounded and surgery coming up. So I apologize for missing, but glad you were able to do this recap here on these guys. Okay, jump in there, Jerry, for Brother. Yeah,
Brother. First, I want to thank Brother for being a sponsor on this webinar. First off, I would like to, I know we have NCR on the call. It's been in business over 100 years. IBM, been in business over 100 years. Think about that for a moment. You have a company that's been in business for over 100 years, giving all the technological changes that have occurred over the last even 10, 20 years, just the longevity. And the thing that I took from the Brother visit, it's a point actually Luke hit on, I believe, and he hit on it really well. The fact that you're having a single device that really is able to address multiple pain points. So instead of dumping capital into single-use devices, Brother was actually highlighting their ability to have a single device that helped with returns, POS, fulfillment workflows, etc. So really, from a value standpoint, bringing something to market that a retailer can get greater utilization out of, a greater value.
And we talked about returns earlier, but we don't make it a big part of this event. But that reverse logistics process, where it's 4 times more expensive to take a product backwards than it is to bring it forwards into the chain. They're a big part of reducing that cost for retailers to get products to the right place for where they need to go.
Absolutely.
Sorry, this is a repeat of the Epson chart earlier. All right, now we're getting to disruptors. Okay, Jerry, this is your favorite spot. But okay, so Lee, Jerry, both of you guys can jump in here. We have a crisis now driven by AI and Micron moving out of the PC memory business. We are seeing rapid. This 172% increase, that was 2 quarters ago. We're talking, I think it's close to 8 times the cost now in some cases for memory, spot memory prices. This is huge. It's going to impact point of sale shipments there. We're still trying to figure it out. I think we're talking low teens. We think it's going to be a drag on point of sale this year, and drive new approaches, more to cloud-based point of sale using a thin client approach there, or Microsoft showed off a PC Link device, small new device, or you can use your existing hardware there, or moving more to an edge type of situation that's serving up dumb screens to the existing point of sale rather than replacing the point of sale. This is a big problem. I think we would see the POS shipments would be much greater if you had just regular PC memory pricing. There, we would see much higher shipments for this because it's just being driven by so many use cases there. And I get it. Yeah, you still need the memory for the edge devices, but it's not an every unit thing. It's one of 20 or one of 30 or one of 40 devices there that you're paying for that. So there are other benefits of doing POS on the edge as well, but this is a big issue. Jerry, back to you, the space guy.
Yeah, so this was kind of near and dear to my heart because I live in Merritt Island, which is home to Kennedy Space Center, which is the epicenter of all of Amazon and SpaceX's activities. And for those of you guys that aren't space geekies, LEO stands for low Earth orbit. So hopefully you learned something on the call. One of the things that Amazon is focusing on, whereas clearly SpaceX and Elon's intent and focus is primarily to the consumer market, Amazon and their Project Kuiper is really focused really more on connectivity for businesses. And 3,200 satellites, we love that. It reinforces the economy in our area. So the more satellites, the merrier. The more entrance into this teleconnectivity space, we really appreciate it in our area. Really changing the way we're communicating, bringing down the cost of communication and making communication viable in areas that it may be really challenged, and then providing retailers, whether it's your primary or your secondary form of communications, providing alternatives out there, which brings down the cost generally for everybody.
Okay, we're down to the final slides, guys. Throw your questions into the chat here, and we'll get to those in just a second. The AI deployment reality check that we saw there, we talked about this earlier with Dollar Tree, but AI, just make sure you're not deploying AI for just AI's sake. That was a message at Lenovo. We talked about the Dollar Tree pivot there. But make no question about it, what's happening now, it looks like Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, put a manifesto, a big 20,000 word letter out there on his concerns about AI and how fast it's moving. It's coming, it's happening, whether we want it or not, and you need to learn how to leverage these tools. Major enhancements on a personal productivity basis here in the last couple of weeks there. Jerry, back to you for Digital Wave.
Yeah, really cool what they're doing. One of the things that internally, we as a small company got introduced to this concept called Council LLM. Council LLM is really an approach to looking and taking the responses from multiple foundational models, aggregating those together, having a secondary model, assess the variances, the validity, the inaccuracies in the other models, and then to bring that as a single response. So for some of our internal strategy questions, we've actually programmed our own Python to conduct that exercise on our own. So we're not paying $20 a month for the subscription to do that. But Digital Wave, they've really been doing true agentic. It had true agentic capability for a few years now that we've seen, and they're applying this sort of Council LLM approach. So just to make sure in certain high criticality functions, they'll take a problem, they'll pose it to multiple models and use that to have a singular answer to a problem on those that are highly critical. And I just thought that this was pretty innovative. Everybody I've heard of is using kind of a single LLM approach. And you do and we've all seen that sometimes models are getting, even though models are getting better and better, occasionally you can still get a squirrely response. So I thought it was a pretty innovative approach to making sure that there was no bias and inaccuracies, and that they were really sure in those super critical compute steps that they wanted to make sure reduced any bias or error in the responses.
Okay. Ricardo, retail media.
Okay.
Got to touch on that.
Retail media. So I'll, as we're running out of time here, just highlight a couple of things. Quick plug that if you want the full deep dive on what was happening with retail media coming out of NRF at the end of the week, the Retail Razor Show has the first episode of the new season. We're going to focus on exactly this, the state of retail media from the brand perspective. I think everybody's used to talking about what retailers are doing with their retail media network, but it's interesting to kind of look from the flip side of it and how do brands view this. So apart from some of the obvious things that you might see on here of retail media maturing, to put this into perspective, when you look at digital ad growth in general across all media formats, retail media has the highest growth anticipated for the year at around 22% based on what brand media leads are saying. Social budgets are only looking at increasing 18%, video 14%, search only 13%. In fact, one of the things that seems to be surfacing from this is that a lot of what were search budgets, part due to AI, but also just because retail media is performing so well, brands are moving budget away from search and into retail media. One of the interesting things from this report, there's a produced out by Sky and Stratably and launched at NRF, is the differences between leaders and laggards in terms of who's making best use of retail media networks. Often people ask, how many retail media networks can a brand work with? Leaders are working with at least 6 and planning to increase to 8 this year. Laggards are working with 5, hoping to increase to 7. So still lagging a little bit behind. Leaders are allocating 27% of their media budget to RMNs versus 23% for laggards. So that's some interesting things. Now, one of the big topics that you may have heard a lot at NRF is around measurement. Retail media is really becoming a full funnel, full stack tool for brands to use to convert. So the critical, of course, is, well, how do you measure this, right? And most brands, when asked in this report, said that only about 15% of them are really confident in the measurement they're getting. But that said, one distinction with the leaders were that rather than feeling like they have to measure return on the ad spend or the incremental return on ad spend for RMNs, they're more worried about measuring what's my sales increase? How much revenue is the money I'm putting into this giving me versus focusing on the measurement metrics, which everyone else seems to be hung up on. So some key distinctions there between leaders and laggards. And the last one that I'll highlight, the more mature RMNs, of course, being Amazon and Walmart. You see the stat here, 92% of brands using Amazon ads, 73% using Walmart Connect. Everyone else after that, very category specific, but they're all a distant third and below in terms of where brands are focusing that spend. But going back to what I said before, if brands are increasing from 6 to 8 RMNs, those category-specific retail media networks are becoming more and more important. A couple of interesting ones that get highlighted in this report were Lowe's and Instacart, because they're getting more and more of a share. The other interesting note is the shift to video. We're all going to start seeing more video ads is the bottom line for that. And whatever surface you're looking at, you can expect to see more video ads. Connected TV and streaming are getting tied into retail media. So one of the things that's interesting trending here is that retailer DSPs are becoming a big challenge to all the traditional DSPs we see, whether it's Google or any of the open web DSPs that are out there. You have things like Amazon partnering with Roku to get exposure for Amazon ads through Roku's streaming network. You have Walmart partnering with Trade Desk. There's lots of these kind of connections. Walmart, of course, using Vizio now as a new surface for Walmart Connect. So brands are finding significant advantages to those retailer DSPs because the closed loop attribution is better, and because they feel it's better use of the commerce data as opposed to just the open web DSPs that are out there. So that's causing more money to be shifted over to those retailer DSPs. So of course, the big question that comes out of this is, what's the impact going to be of all the agentic commerce things that we talked about earlier? And is that going to steal from retail media, or is there somehow going to be a blending of where brands spend their ad dollars? So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. We are seeing this drive towards retail media actually start driving more mergers and consolidation in the retail industry, particularly when it comes to C-stores and fuel. When you go into a station, what loyalty card do you want to use? Like 5 different ones. And depending on whether they're a franchise or whatever, the fuel guys don't get that data depending on what's happening by what choice you have there. And we're seeing some the old fuel brands that divested from C stores actually now buying up more stores now as a result of things. Really, really fascinating stuff there. So that was it. That was our last official slide, guys. So once again, thanks for staying with us. It looks like we're about 75% of you made it to this point. We're going to open it to Q&A at this point. Now I see the numbers drop fast. As soon as I said that.
Questions. I love it.
But thank you guys for staying with us. Thank you, Elo, Microsoft, and Brother for making this happen. A lot of slides, a lot of things there. So please give us your questions and we'll try to answer those and hang on here for a little bit. Lee, did any come through that I missed? That
I don't remember seeing any that I missed.
Okay. Any other questions that you guys have out there?
Yes, we will share the presentation. We will make the deck available as well, I think.
Yeah, that's going to be it's ready. I just need to put it up on the web. So in an hour or so, that'll be ready. We'll have the recording as well that will be available that you guys can do. Hopefully this worked on LinkedIn. If you've been watching on LinkedIn, do a shout out there. Let us know, because obviously I'm not looking at both. But here's our contact information. Really appreciate you guys hanging with us. Stay safe out there with this crazy weather. As it's getting colder, and really appreciate all of you. It was great to see so many people at NRF. Sorry I didn't see more. This is my 33rd, so it's hard to keep up with that energy after Super Saturday leading into it. I'm feeling old at this point for sure. So anyway, thank you guys, appreciate it, and we'll drop off. So
We heard LinkedIn was great. That's awesome.
good deal. That's the first time we did that. So thanks, everybody.